Happy Africa Day. Welcome to Second Take with Ashwyn and Betty. Today I'm not going to be alone. I'm going to be with Augetto Greg as we organically go through what's been going on in Africa democracy-wise. We might even touch on natural resources. And when we say touch on natural resources, we don't mean the way your minister touches on natural resources. In fact, if you're in Congo, you know that a prime minister was just sentenced to 10 years of hard labor for $245 million embezzlement of public funds. But like I said, that's not what we're doing. We're just giving a second take on Africa on Africa Day. Welcome to the show. So, as promised, joining me is veteran journalist. Can I say that yet? I think I can. Veteran journalist Augetto Greg as we talk about Africa, the political landscape, and more. Happy Africa Day, my brother.
Happy Africa Day.
It's a wonderful day, you know,
Yes.
and I feel like we don't always celebrate it as often as we should, as well as we should as Africans, but it's a day that represents so much for all of us.
Yes.
The first words that come to my mind are freedom and liberation. What comes to your mind when you think of
Hope
Africa
for the
Day?
future?
Yes,
Yeah, I think we've got lots of potential.
Yes.
Opportunity is there.
yes.
And it's up to us to grab it.
All right. So if you're hoping for some positive chat, that was it right there. And now it's time to dig in deep. All right, so I'm going to throw some subjects at you, and we're
Okay.
just going to talk about them. I'm going to start with Gabon.
Okay.
All right. A couple of years ago, a military coup happens. Oligui comes through, gets rid of Ali Bongo, whose family had, they had a dynasty going
Yes,
over
yes.
there with decades and decades. The country was getting poorer, they were getting richer. You know how this goes. In fact, our very first episode of Second Take was based on Ali Bongo's, disposal,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
And now Nguema is in power. How did he get into power? Well, he took off the military uniform and put on a suit. He breakdanced, by the way, during his
Oh, I
political
didn't know
campaign.
that.
I saw that. I'll give him 5 out of 10. Not bad. I've never seen a soldier breakdance. So he breakdanced during his political campaign. The opposition was nowhere to be seen. The only person who was a supposed opposition was someone who was already part of Ali Bongo's administration.
Yes,
so the
yes.
people weren't really going to go for that. I think he left with less than 5% of the vote, if I'm not mistaken. So he becomes president after putting the military uniform down.
Yeah.
African Union decides, why should we ban you?
Yes.
Why? This is not the time to do this. So African Union re-invites Gabon. A week later, Gabon has got some of the cheapest fuel in Africa. I don't know if those two things are connected, but a week later, cheapest fuel in Africa, like second to Libya, if I'm not mistaken. And surprised that Libya still got that going on. But yes, you
Yes.
do. And he takes over power. Ali Bongo is now closer to us than he is to Gabon. He's in Angola.
Yeah.
Como estás, amigo? I hope you're good. Get some Havianas, go to the beach. But in Gabon, they're going to continue with the trial.
Yeah.
So, I guess convict him in absentia if that's the case. What are your thoughts on Africa essentially, rubber stamping these questionable elections? It's questionable. I'm not going to use the word wrong. I'm just going to say questionable. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, firstly, elections are necessary and important. So coming from a history where there was nothing similar to establishing a precedent of holding elections is important. And you have to have elections in order to demand better elections. So it's a step in the right direction. Definitely, I think that the most progressive and forward-moving countries in Africa are those who have established their own kinds of democracy. However, I don't think that Western democracy or the Western model of democracy is necessarily always the best or most appropriate for us in Africa. What is important is that citizens must feel that they have a say in their own country and they must support their own government.
All right.
So as long as they are moving forward, even it's baby steps, I support that. I think that what Gabonese now must focus on is to cement the victories that they have achieved and not allow for backsliding and return to completely authoritarian kind of system.
Now, interesting thing about an authoritarian rule. Africans, we tend to like the occasional authoritarian rule, but we want you to sneak up on us. You know what I mean? Don't rush into it. Buy us some wine. Adjust the constitution a little bit. You know, bit by bit, suppress dissent. Not a lot. Don't start with the leader. Start with the secretary of the opposition party. You know, ease us into it. You know what I mean? That's how we like it. But now it seems like we're also just quite happy with an authoritarian quickie. If you think of Burkina Faso, for example.
Yes, I'm thinking of Burkina Faso. But what I want to say, Ashwyn, is that the buck has to stop somewhere. Somebody has to make a decision, and that decision must be final, right? But what we need is that whoever makes that final decision, before they come to that decision, they must at least hear from the different sides, because everybody is going to present any story in their own favor. And what is in their own favor might not be in the favor of the nation or the country in general. So yes, you need decisive leadership in order to get anywhere. You can't have the kind of leadership where we're going left today and tomorrow we're going right. There are consequences to that, as we are seeing on the world stage at the moment. But before that decision is made, you want the decision maker to be informed. And for that to happen, they need to have, or all sides need to have access to that decision maker's ear. You can't just be listening to one side, because then obviously all these decisions will be one-sided. So that's why I'm saying that the Western model of democracy, which has been promoted and sold to us for so many years, might not fit all of our African realities.
I sometimes think that Western democracy is like iPhone. You know, I mean, if you're in America, everything's there. You've got all the products, everyone else uses an iPhone. But, you know, if you're in rural Namibia, you might just want a Huawei. You know, you might want a Samsung, which you can at least go on YouTube. You don't want to have too many different subscriptions. And if you're to look at how, you know, the state of Western democracy at this stage, let's just go with who Western democracy has championed as the champion of their democracy, America. Their democracy came up with Trump. That was their democracy working. It pulled itself together, and the result of their democracy was Donald Trump. Whatever your opinions are on him, your opinions are on him. But that's just what happened there. Now, when you look at Traore, you think of Duma Boko was mentioning what you're talking about. Duma Boko is the president of Botswana, the recently elected president of Botswana. And Duma Boko was like, you look at Ibrahim Traore, when he wants to make a decision, he makes a decision and they move. When I want to make a decision, I have to consult. I'm sure Botswana were listening to that like, what do you want?
But I must say that President Boko is doing great things in Botswana. He is presenting a leadership style which is quite exemplary. And he's prioritizing bread and butter issues. You know, in terms of, they've set a really ambitious target for housing now. And it really looks like they are able to make some progress in that regard. And personally, I believe that ultimately it's still the truth that people do things.
Absolutely.
You know, rather than infrastructure, rather than technology, rather than money. Somebody needs to press the button. Ultimately, there's somebody who did the thing that happened.
Absolutely. And he understands that because he's got a perfect haircut. And if you think about that haircut, you have to know his barber is on it 24/7. I got to respect that. We're taking a quick break before we come back to this Africa Day special. Welcome back to Second Take. I'm talking to Augetto Greg about African politics, the political landscape, and everything that is happening that affects Africa globally. Just now we were talking about Burkina Faso and Gabon, which is very essential. Let's come down a little bit from Burkina Faso there. Let's go to Tanzania. Now the election of Samia Suluhu Hassan was historic. It was truly historic. It was needed, a female leader taking after Magufuli, who was a strong man for all intents and purposes, truly. And people were very optimistic about it. She was there at the inauguration of Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa. You know, reading the official speech, getting everything done, and it was lovely. And the president of Namibia, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, was also in Tanzania. Those images of the two ladies, just incredible,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's so inspirational. It's so important for Africans, for the African girl child, to see what is possible.
Yes, yes.
Now that I've said that,
Yeah.
the approach to democracy seems to be just a little different.
Yes, quite.
A little different. Why? Because Tundu Lissu, who is the main opposition leader, is currently in prison for treason. The court trial has begun.
Yeah.
He's in prison for treason. He didn't agree with the document for the electoral conduct. He says some speeches which she felt, or the Tanzanian government felt, were inflammatory.
Yes.
At this first trial hearing, there were Kenyan activists, including a former Kenyan judge, who came to show solidarity. They were deported from Tanzania. How do we look at this? How do we express this dichotomy? Because
Okay, let me start with if I'm not mistaken, then the Tanzanian and the Namibian president are the only two current sitting female presidents in Africa.
Yes, prior to them was Madame Johnson of Liberia.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'd also like to point out the important role that Tanzania played in terms of the liberation of Africa.
Definitely. And Tanzania is known as Tanganyika, the beginning of nations.
Yes.
So we know, especially the Bantu people came down from Tanzania. Swahili is the base language for all Bantu languages. All Bantu languages came from Swahili. Sorry, please continue.
And even in Namibia, in our SWAPO party, there is the Tanganyika group,
yes,
which is a significant faction. So what happens in Tanzania is very important, very significant, not only historically, but for liberated Africa today. Then I'd like to just point out that in South Africa, their president was just in America, where he was ambushed by Donald Trump, who displayed videos to the media and the whole world, showing things that Julius Malema said.
And inaccurate images of what was actually happening in Congo, as if it was happening in South Africa.
Basically weaponizing the free speech in South Africa to the detriment of the South African image.
Yes.
So I bring that up to highlight that allowing everybody to say anything they want, it's a two-edged sword. There can be dangers involved. However, if you don't allow people to say whatever they want, there are aspects to problems that you never get exposed to. There are possible solutions that you never hear about. There's whole sides of issues that you are not aware of. And if you are not aware of all of the sides, the aspects, the solutions, then chances of you effectively dealing with those issues once and for all, putting them behind you, are very slim. We see that happening in the Congo, where it's a long-standing problem which nobody can solve. And as a consequence, there are very predatory actors which are still, it's like vultures, still feeding on the flesh of the Congo and the Congolese people up until today.
100%.
Because there are issues which cannot be solved. Why can the issues not be solved? Because decision makers can't listen to everybody. Not all voices are heard. So there's definitely negative consequences to not allowing people to say whatever they want to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how do we strike that balance?
Well, I think that in Namibia we are working towards that balance.
I think press freedom is a big part of that.
Press freedom is definitely very necessary. But at the same time, if you're going to have press freedom, it is vitally important that you are alive to what is being said in the press and you are engaging. The biggest problem with press freedom that we are facing in the world today is false narrative, false news, disinformation, misinformation. Now, disinformation, misinformation, and all of that, it works within a vacuum. If something is said and not counted, then the false narrative spreads. And in fact, the best way to avoid that kind of thing is to state the facts first. If there's a problem and you highlight the problem first, then you set the narrative.
Yes.
And then the confines of where the disinformation can go are already set.
But for that, you have to be willing to be held accountable.
Yes, yes. You have to be held accountable, ultimately. I mean, who are you serving? Are you here to serve yourself, or are you here to serve your people? And I think that that is a fundamental discussion which is happening in progressive spaces all across Africa and here in Namibia as well. You know, we are fighting the scourge of corruption.
Yes.
And the scourge of corruption comes down to the idea, did you die for the country? Does the country owe you? If the country owes you, then you are justified to take whatever you want. But if you owe the country, or if you owe the future generations, then you are not justified to take whatever you want.
100%.
You have to serve those future generations first.
100%.
And in return for serving the future generations, the country is entitled to give you.
In return.
In return.
And that's what's key. And also, the main reason you fought was to serve the future generations.
Well, was it?
So,
or was the main reason you fought so that you could sit?
Self-enrichment.
Yeah, was the main reason you fought so that you could sit with the elite? Because that's what we've seen happening.
Thomas Sankara predicted it. Chris Hani predicted this.
Instead of changing the system, what has happened in many cases is that we now have elite of a different hue. You know, where we had the white elite. You know, in Namibia, we're coming from apartheid, we're coming from colonialism.
Yeah.
All the elite was white.
Yeah.
Now, all of our elite is not white.
Yes.
We still have white elite.
too.
We've got black elite.
You too.
But the elite and the rest of our population, the gap is widening.
It's very wide.
And that's a problem.
At some point, second most unequal country economically.
Yes, yes. So we don't want that.
Yes.
What we want is for all of our people to be empowered. Because coming back to what I said earlier, people do things. So if your people are not empowered, they cannot do the things that need to be done.
Yes.
And also, I think another fundamental idea is about the cake, right? Do you want your slice of the cake to be bigger? If your slice of the cake is bigger, there's less for everybody else. However, if your 10% slice remains 10%, but the cake grows, then that 10% means more.
It means more, but you just don't want more when everyone else is getting more. You want more for yourself and less for everybody else.
In South Africa, we see the consequence of your slice of the cake getting bigger and bigger. That's why we have these checkers who've just left on, to be refugees.
To refugees.
Because
this is second tech, so I can say it. It's called the Great Tech. That's what South Africans are calling it. But please continue.
And check is a derogatory term for go away.
Yes, go away.
But the reason why they feel they have to leave, even leaving behind 5-bedroom houses, is because when you are rich all by yourself and everybody around you is poor, then you are living in a constant state of fear because you know people want to take what you have. But if everybody's rich,
then
why
it's
would
different.
You
know what? On that note, we're going to cut to a quick break before we return and we talk about what we want to talk about as well. Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House. Welcome back to Second Take. Now, last week, Cyril Ramaphosa went to the White House and it went as you'd expect it to. Have a look.
I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, we have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that. Is Natalie here, somebody here to turn that? I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down, and just put this on, it's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land.
These are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death.
People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are
and this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States,
those are all recent. Those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about.
The crime is bad.
The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats.
So, Johan Rupert, at the end of that, not pulling any punches, he went directly at John Steenhuisen. I'm sorry, that was hilarious.
It was.
The way he said he runs the Western Cape, he won't admit it. The DA must have been like, excuse me, what do you mean? And then he says, there's the worst, the gang violence in the Cape Flats. That's Johan Rupert, at worst, the second richest man in Africa. And he's saying those words. But let's talk about this entire meeting.
Yes.
Cyril Ramaphosa goes to the US. We know Cyril Ramaphosa is a diplomat,
yes,
a negotiator, Captain Cupcake, much respect. He is a negotiator in a way that Trump thinks he is.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Trump would be able to negotiate with Trump. But Cyril Ramaphosa, he was like, let's get this done. So he wants to talk trade.
Yes.
He wants to keep the subject about money. But he does bring three things that Trump really, really loves. Yeah, and I don't know if you knew the list. It's white men, rich people, and golf. So he comes through with John Steenhuisen, his Minister of Agriculture. Nicely done, fair and fine. We get that's your opposition party.
Yeah.
I love it. Johan Rupert, I mean, I'm not going to say white monopoly capital. I'm just going to say white capital. But the man, he gets it done. He's an astute businessman.
Yes.
He's got wide-spanning businesses, and you can't take away the immense hard work it takes to establish all of that.
And
maintain all of that. So Johan Rupert is there. He brings the big, easy Ernie Els. You know what I mean? Supreme golfer.
Yes.
You got to love it. It's not enough. It's not enough because Trump comes through with images from Congo, and he's just continuing this right-wing rhetoric. I would like to say I was proud of President Cyril Ramaphosa. He handled himself well.
He
was actually teaching you. If you notice, he was lecturing Trump on what diplomacy is.
Yes.
He takes those papers and says, yes, we disagree, but what we do when we disagree is we sit at the table like Mandela did, wink, wink. Yeah. And then we sit at the table, we come together, we discuss. And now the question I have to ask was it necessary? We knew what was coming.
It was necessary. President Ramaphosa went there to reset the relations between South Africa and America. Those relations have been soured because that narrative of white genocide has run riot in America. And President Trump has taken action based on that narrative.
Yes.
And the action he's taken disregards the consequences even for American interests in South Africa and worldwide. So to allow the reality to be presented to Trump, because remember, Trump is also isolated. It comes back to what we were talking about earlier, the ability to hear the other side of the story.
As opposed to Elon Musk's text messages.
Exactly, so that you can make an informed decision. Whatever your decision is, as the leader, we're all going to follow, because a ship can only have one captain. And the captain says left, we go left. Because if we don't all go left, the ship's going to sink. But we're hoping that the captain is not steering us into an iceberg, right? And he can only do that if somebody tells him, Captain, there's an iceberg, there, right? If that message doesn't get to him, then he's going to make whatever decision. So it was important for Ramaphosa to go there to allow for Trump to hear the other side of the story. And even that's what Ramaphosa said directly when it was asked by a South African journalist, what will it take for Trump to be convinced that there's no genocide in South Africa? Ramaphosa jumped in and said, it will require that Trump hears what my white citizens
are saying,
have come to say.
100%.
Yeah.
To be fair, he does not listen to his own white citizens, does not listen to anyone. His ego leads. I don't believe anyone would have advised him to go with the tariffs the way that he did as well.
Even so, ultimately, this will allow somebody to put the spreadsheet in front of him
Definitely.
to say, these are your investments which are suffering.
Aha.
These are your interests which are hurt.
Yeah.
And that message might not have reached him before.
And this was a necessary engagement.
It was necessary to create that gap for
have-
the information to flow.
Yes.
Because I just want to say that nobody can be empowered without access to information, which is why I'm passionate about journalism. We provide the information as long as the information is accurate and timely and interesting and relevant. You get to decide how to take the opportunities that you spot in that information.
Powerful, powerful, and necessary. And as we wrap up the show, I would just like to let you know what my solution was for this. My solution would have been no one is going to the US. None of you are going anywhere. Because you know how we do it in Africa? We sort our things out here.
Yeah.
You don't go anywhere. Election, our numbers are looking shaky. DA, get into the bed with us. That's how it works in Africa. You don't get to run away from what we do over here. You don't get to just decide to live a life where you don't see combis. How dare you? How dare you go to a place where they don't make biltong? They have other words for it.
Yeah.
How dare you leave what we've built here? And that's just what I've always believed.
I
feel like that's one thing we got right. Are trying to get right.
Yeah.
We don't agree. We
Yeah.
might not even like each other. You know what? We might often hate each other, but we figure it out here.
I agree with that.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
It's good to have you on the show, Augetto, and that's been your Africa Day episode with Augetto Greg and Ashwyn Betty, as we're talking about the broader African political landscape and other interesting tidbits in between. From me and the Second Take team, do take care of yourself. Have a happy Africa Day. We have everything to be proud of. And just a little fact, some historians say Africa's first name was Al-Kebilana, and it meant the Garden of Eden. I think it's time we start eating the fruit of our labor. And by that, I don't mean the poison apple. Good night.